Now children, draw closer. Yes, nearer to the fire, feel its warmth. Out there the night gathers. Elderby Cove is settling under a blanket of dusk. The sea sighs on the shingle. It holds its secrets close, you see. Very close, but sometimes, just sometimes, when the wind is right. And the veil between worlds is thin. Those secrets, they whisper. This old place, this cove of ours, it has a tale, a chilling tale, one that the oldest stones here remember and shiver still. Listen, can you hear it? Not just the crackle of the logs, not just the distant moan of the buoy. No, there is something else, a murmur, a breath held too long. It's the story of Blackwater Cove. Oh, we call it Elderby now, a prettier name perhaps, but the water remembers its older name, its darker name. This story, it clings to the air, especially on nights like these. Especially as the centenary approaches, a time for celebration, they say, but also a time for remembering. The mist, you see, the mist is key. It rolls in from the sea, not like ordinary fog. This mist, it has a life of its own. It glows faintly. It carries sounds, sounds that don't belong. Footsteps on cobblestones that are no longer there. The creak of rigging from a ship long lost, and a chill that settles deep in your bones. Deeper than any winter frost. It's a warning, some say. A harbinger. The sea does not forget, nor do those it has claimed. So, settle in. Let the fire paint pictures in your eyes, but do not look too deeply into the shadows it casts. For this is a tale not for the faint of heart. It speaks of greed, of betrayal, and of a reckoning long overdue. A reckoning that began with a single fateful night, a night when a ship sought sanctuary and found only treachery, here, in our very own Elderby Cove, or as it was once known in hushed tones, Blackwater Cove. The name itself seems to drip with unease, does it not? Elderby Cove, a quaint name, isn't it? Nestled here on the forgotten coast, a cluster of cottages, whitewashed walls and slate roofs, they huddle together, as if for comfort, against the wind, against the sea, and perhaps against something more. The centenary celebrations are just weeks away, 100 years since its official founding. Bunting is planned, speeches prepared, a grand fete on the green. The entire village hums with a nervous energy, an excitement tinged with something else. The heart of Elderby Cove is St. Jude's, the ancient church. It stands on a low rise, overlooking the harbour. Its stone is weathered, stained by salt and time. Its bell, silent now for many years, once rang out warnings of storms and perhaps of other things. Inside, the air is always cool, always still, as if holding its breath. The vicar, a good man, Thomas Ashton, he feels it too, this undercurrent, this tremor of disquiet beneath the festive preparations. He walks the ancient aisles and he wonders. The centenary marks a milestone, a testament to resilience, to community, so they say. But every founding has its secrets, doesn't it? Every cornerstone laid perhaps upon something less admirable, something hidden. The original families. Their names are carved on plaques, honoured in local law. The brave souls who tamed this wild coast, or so the story goes. But the sea wind whispers a different tune, a more discordant melody. It hints at shadows, at deeds best left undisturbed. Preparations continue, of course. The mayor polishes his speech. The Women's Institute bakes commemorative biscuits. Children practice their songs for the pageant. Yet as dusk falls earlier each day, as the autumn air grows sharper, a certain watchfulness descends upon Elderby Cove. Eyes dart a little quicker towards the sea. Doors are bolted a little tighter at night. The centenary approaches like a tide. And some fear what it might bring ashore, what it might stir from the depths, from the long, silent sleep. The legend, yes, the legend that haunts this place. It concerns a ship, a proud vessel. She was called the Sea Serpent. A fitting name, perhaps, for she sailed troubled waters. Her master, Captain Morion, a man of means, but marked by a cruel affliction, a creeping sickness that turned his skin to something unnatural, something that made lesser men recoil. He was not welcome in many ports, an outcast, yet he carried a dream and a fortune in gold to build a refuge, a sanctuary, for himself and others like him. One wild night, decades before Elderby Cove was truly born. The Sea Serpent battled a fierce storm. The waves crashed like thunder. The wind howled like a banshee. Captain Morion, desperate, sought shelter. He saw a light, a flickering beacon on the headland, a promise of safety. He steered his ship towards it, towards what he believed was the harbour light, or a friendly signal from shore. He was weary, his crew exhausted. Landfall. That was all they craved, an end to the relentless, brutal sea. But the light, children, the light was a lie. It was no lighthouse, no welcoming lamp. It was a campfire, deliberately set high on the cliffs by wreckers, men from the scattered hovels that predated our village, men with hearts as hard as the rocks below. And then the mist, that accursed supernatural mist. It rolled in, thick, choking, glowing with an eerie luminescence. It confused the already battered ship. It blinded the desperate captain, guided by the false light, swallowed by the spectral fog. The sea serpent struck the hidden reefs. She was torn apart, her timbers shattered, her cries lost in the storm, and the mist, the greedy sea, claimed her and her crew. Captain Morion, they say, clung to his strongbox of gold, even as the waves dragged him down. The wreckers, under the cover of that unnatural fog, plundered what they could. Gold, meant for a place of healing, stolen, used to build the foundations of what would become their prosperous village, our Elderby Cove. A prosperity, some whisper, built on blood and betrayal, and the agony of lost souls. Vicar Thomas Ashton, a gentle soul, more scholar than preacher, some thought. He loved St. Jude's, its history, its quiet sanctity. But the approaching centenary filled him with a peculiar dread, not of the festivities, but of what they might awaken. He felt the weight of the village's past, pressing down. He often wandered the dusty vestry, poring over old parish records, seeking he knew not what. A sense of unease gnawed at him, a feeling that something was deeply wrong, terribly amiss, in the very fabric of Elderby Cove. One afternoon, sorting through a forgotten chest, tucked away in the damp undercroft of the church, his fingers brushed against a small, leather-bound volume. It was a diary, its pages brittle with age, the ink faded but legible. The script was that of Jedediah Grimshaw, one of Elderby Cove's revered founding fathers, his name etched on the main plaque in the village square, a pillar of the nascent community. Vicar Ashton felt a tremor of anticipation, and a deeper chill, as if the book itself radiated cold. He began to read, and the blood turned to ice in his veins. The diary was not a record of piety or brave pioneering. It was a confession, a chronicle of cold, calculated greed. Grimshaw wrote of the storm, of the sea serpent, of Captain Morion and his cursed gold. He detailed the plot, how they, the founders, had deliberately lit the false beacon, how they had prayed for the mist. The supernatural mist, they knew, often accompanied such storms, to hide their crime, to ensure the ship was utterly lost. The words painted a horrifying picture, the founders watching from the cliffs, as the sea serpent met its doom, their exultation at the ship's destruction, their haste to claim the treasure, gold intended for mercy, diverted by malice. Grimshaw wrote of Morion's strange illness, a revulsion, a fear, that this leper's gold might taint them. Yet their avarice overcame their fear. The diary spoke of the pact, to never speak of it, to build their new lives upon this stolen fortune. Vicar Ashton closed the diary, his hands trembling. The church suddenly felt colder, less sacred, more like a tomb. As the centenary drew nearer, a change came over Elderby Cove. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The air grew heavy, expectant. Even the sea itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the mist began to appear more frequently. Not the usual coastal fog, mind you. This was different. It would roll in silently, even on clear nights. And it possessed that faint, unnerving luminescence. The old tales spoke of such a mist. The mist that had ensnared the sea serpent. It clung to the cobblestones. It swirled around St. Jude's spire, a silent, glowing shroud. Electrical disturbances followed. Lights would flicker and die. Radios would crackle with static, then emit strange, sighing sounds, or whispers, too faint to decipher, but undeniably there. The new digital clock in the village square reset itself to a date decades past. The night of the shipwreck, telephones would ring only to offer a dial tone or worse. The sound of water, dripping, gurgling, as if from a submerged place. A cold, wet hand seemed to reach out from the past, twisting the modern world awry. Then came the voices, carried on the wind, or perhaps only in the mind. Phantom cries for help, the mournful tolling of a ship's bell, though no ship was near and no bell had rung in St. Jude's for years. Children complained of nightmares, of seeing pale faces at their windows, faces with seaweed in their hair, and eyes that stared, empty, accusing. The scent of brine and something else, something like decay, would drift through closed windows, leaving a lingering chill and a profound sense of sorrow. Written warnings began to appear, words scrawled in the condensation on window panes: thieves, murderers, gold, sometimes just a single accusing fingerprint, left in dust where no one had walked. On the ancient flagstones of St. Jude's porch, a wet footprint would appear, and then slowly fade, as if an unseen visitor had passed. The village animals grew restless. Dogs would whine at unseen things. Cats would arch their backs, hissing at empty doorways. The unseen tide was rising, and its touch was cold and full of malice. Eleanor Vance ran the local radio station, Radio Elderby. It was a small operation, really, broadcasting from the old lighthouse. Now automated, its great lamp still swept the sea. But its keeper's cottage, well, that housed her studio. Eleanor was a modern woman, sensible, down to earth. She had a young son, Leo, a bright, imaginative boy of 7. He often played near the lighthouse while his mother worked. One blustery afternoon, Leo came running to her. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a terror she had never seen before. "Mummy," he stammered, "there's a man in the lamp room." Eleanor frowned. That was impossible. The lamp room was locked, accessible only by a steep internal ladder. "A tall man, all wet," Leo insisted. "He was looking out at the sea. He looked so sad." Eleanor, though sceptical, felt a prickle of unease. She checked. The door was locked, the lamp room empty. She dismissed it as a child's overactive imagination, fueled by the village's growing apprehension and the omnipresent whispering mist. But then, strange things started happening during her broadcasts. Equipment would malfunction. Microphones would cut out, replaced by a sudden icy silence. Or worse, by faint, gurgling sounds, like someone struggling for air underwater. One evening, as she played a requested sea shanty, the music warped, slowed down, and a voice whispered through her headphones. A cold, raspy voice. "The gold! Give it back!" Eleanor ripped the headphones off, her heart pounding. The studio felt suddenly freezing. Leo refused to go near the lighthouse again. He drew pictures of a sinking ship, and a tall, sorrowful man with seaweed in his hair, staring from the lantern room. Eleanor tried to rationalize it all: interference, faulty wiring, stress. But the incidents grew more frequent, more overtly supernatural. One night, during a live broadcast discussing the upcoming centenary, all the lights in the lighthouse went out, plunging her into darkness. And through the gloom, from the lamp room above, she heard a single, mournful cry, a sound of utter despair that was not human. The eerie portent soon gave way to something far more terrifying. The spectral presence in Elderby Cove intensified, focused, as if the centenary was a beacon, drawing them forth from their watery graves. Townsfolk, hardened fishermen mostly, began to report sightings. Not just fleeting glimpses, but sustained encounters. Figures on the shore, tall, gaunt, draped in what looked like rotting sailcloth. Their forms indistinct in the ever-present mist. They would stand and watch, their unseen eyes fixed on the village. These were not passive apparitions. A fisherman mending his nets late one evening felt an icy grip on his arm. He turned. Nothing. But 3 livid bruises appeared later, shaped like skeletal fingers. Another found his boat adrift, its mooring ropes seemingly cut by an unseen blade. Whispers followed people home from the tavern, the heavy tread of sea boots on the cobbles behind them. But when they spun around, there was only the swirling fog and the distant, mournful sigh of the sea. A palpable sense of menace began to grip Elderby Cove. The attacks grew bolder. Old man Hemlock, who lived alone near the beach, swore a dripping figure had walked through his closed door, demanding something he couldn't understand, its voice like the grinding of stones. He was found the next morning, huddled by his cold fireplace, his hair turned white, mute with terror. The ghosts of the sea serpent were no longer just sorrowful shades. They were revenants seeking something or someone. Their patience after a century had clearly run out. Their anger was a palpable force. All paths, it seemed, led to St. Jude's. The spectral energy converged upon the ancient church as if drawn by an invisible current. The air around it grew colder, the mist thicker. Vicar Ashton, armed with the terrible knowledge from Grimshaw's diary, knew that the spirits were not just haunting the village, they were seeking justice, a reckoning for the crime committed so long ago. The stolen gold, the betrayed trust. The centenary was not a celebration, it was a deadline, and time was rapidly running out. The storm was breaking. The night before the centenary dawned dark and tempestuous. A fierce gale lashed Elderby Cove, driving rain against the windows of St. Jude's as if the heavens themselves wept or raged. Inside, Vicar Thomas Ashton stood alone before the ancient altar. He held Jedediah Grimshaw's diary in one hand, in the other a small, tarnished wooden box. He had found it hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the vestry, exactly where the diary had hinted. It contained a few gold coins, blackened with age. The last remnants, he prayed, of Captain Morian's stolen treasure. He had to try. He had to make amends for the sins of the village fathers, for the century of silence. He began to speak, his voice trembling at first, then gaining strength. "Spirits of the sea serpent," he called out, "souls of Captain Morian and his lost crew, I know your story, I know the injustice you suffered." The wind howled outside, a shutter banged violently as if in response. The church grew impossibly cold. He could feel their presence, cold, unseen, waiting, listening. He felt a profound sense of sorrow emanate from the shadows. "Your gold," he continued, placing the box on the altar. "What little remains I offer back to you, a token of our shame, our remorse." He opened the diary. "And this confession, the truth of what was done. Let it be known." He then spoke of the founders' greed, their cruelty, their fear of Morian's affliction. He did not spare them. He laid bare the dark secret at the heart of Elderby Cove. Then he paused and offered the only other thing he had. "If gold is not enough, if truth is not enough, then take me in recompense for their sins." A profound silence fell. The wind outside seemed to die away. The rain softened to a whisper. The oppressive cold in the church lessened almost imperceptibly. Vicar Ashton waited, his heart pounding. He felt a strange lightness, as if a great burden had been lifted. Not just from him, but from the very stones of St. Jude's, from Elderby Cove itself. Slowly, tentatively, he opened his eyes. The candles still flickered. The church was empty. Or so it seemed. A fragile peace settled. Had it worked? Had they accepted his plea, his offering? A profound sense of calm settled over St. Jude's. The storm outside had completely abated. Through the ancient windows, Vicar Ashton could see the first hint of dawn, painting the sky in pale, watery colours. The oppressive atmosphere that had choked the church for so long had lifted, replaced by a stillness that felt almost benevolent. He was exhausted, drained emotionally and physically, but a sliver of hope warmed him. Perhaps, just perhaps, his desperate plea had been heard. Perhaps the spirits of the sea serpent were finally at peace. Appeased, he sank onto a wooden pew. The diary and the small box of coins still lay on the altar, a testament to the night's terrible vigil. He felt a tear trace a path down his cheek, a tear of relief, of profound gratitude. Elderby Cove would have its centenary, and perhaps now it could truly celebrate, free from the shadow of its dark past. He imagined the villagers waking to a brighter day, the fear gone from their eyes. The mist, he noticed, had receded entirely from the church grounds. It was over. It had to be. He allowed himself a small, weary smile. He had faced the darkness, and he had, it seemed, prevailed. He owed it to the village, to cleanse the stain, to finally let those poor souls rest. He thought of Captain Morian, of his stolen dream. Perhaps now his spirit could find some solace. The vicar closed his eyes for a moment, offering a silent prayer of thanks. The silence in the church was deep, comforting the silence of absolution. Or so he believed, in that fragile moment of respite. Then a single drop of ice-cold water landed on his hand. He opened his eyes. Another dropped onto his forehead. He looked up. The roof was sound, no leak. A sudden bone-deep chill enveloped him, colder than before, the faint scent of brine and decay stronger now. A shadow fell over him, though he was alone. He turned slowly, his blood freezing. Standing in the aisle, not a host of spectres, but one, tall, dripping, its eyes fixed on him with an ancient sorrow and an inescapable claim. Captain Morian had returned, for him and him alone. The sacrifice was accepted, just not in the way the vicar had hoped. The reckoning was complete.